housekeeping issues and professional registrations being called to order. Diane, call the roll.
Chairman Brown.
Here.
Senator Berger.
Here.
Senator Brown, 26.
Here.
Senator Huff. Senator Lewis. Present. Senator McCreary. Senator Shore. We do have a quorum.
We have quorum. We have two bills here today. Let's see, Senate Bill 61, Senator Brown 26. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Ben Brown, State Senator for the 26th District, and I appreciate the opportunity to present Senate Bill 61. One of the most pressing issues facing our state is the current labor shortage. A contributing factor to this is that our state has fallen short in terms of attracting new talent. In fact, over the last decade, we've experienced the slowest rate of population growth in Missouri's history. This bill aims to address that problem and would make it easier for skilled workers to move here, find a job, and get to work. SB61 stipulates that if someone has 3 years of work experience from a job in a state that doesn't require a license, they would be able to apply that real-world experience towards obtaining a temporary 2-year license. This would allow them to continue to work and provide for their family while completing any remaining education or other requirements needed to qualify for their permanent license. This bill also applies to military experience, so it would ease the transition to civilian life for those that have served. The 2-year temporary license, it was compromise language we arrived at the first year I filed this bill, which was supported by professional registration. We believe that this struck the right balance between allowing our state to be more competitive in terms of attracting talented, competent people to the workplace while maintaining safeguards to protect the health and safety of every Missourian. This bill also passed the Senate previously with a vote of 33-1. Missouri has passed reforms in the past to offer license reciprocity to those moving from a state with an existing license. This bill would simply open the door to those that have the proper qualifications and skills, but who by no fault of their own just happen to work in the state without a statewide license. In order to apply for the temporary license, professionals must show proof of real-world experience, which could be verified through wage statements and employment background checks, with the applicant covering the cost. An applicant would still be required to pass any state or board-required testing to ensure that they possess the necessary qualifications and are competent in their field. This ensures no one would be able to obtain a license without first demonstrating the proper expertise, whether that expertise was obtained through stringent educational requirements or real-world experience. This policy has also already been tested. 5 states have enacted similar policies, including 3 directly bordering our state. This means there are at least 3 states that are directly competing against us for labor that currently have a leg up. This bill simply allows us to bring Missouri more in line with states like Iowa, Kansas, and Mississippi, and stay competitive in terms of attracting talented, hard-working people to our state. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for Senator Brown? Senator Berger.
Thank you for bringing this forward. How many people do you anticipate would take advantage of something like this or attract to this? Or have you had many calls about it?
I don't have a finite number, and I see this. There's no one-size-fits-all solution to the lack of growth that we've seen in our state. I think that this would be one of several tools in our toolbox, so to speak, that would allow us to be viewed more openly by those looking to move somewhere. Right now, if you're coming from a state that doesn't have a current statewide license, and say you've worked in your field for a couple decades, you could still be required to go back and start completing, college courses or residency requirements, things like that. Meanwhile, if you're raising a family, how are you supposed to provide for that family if you can't practice in your trade that you've done for decades because of some technicalities under Missouri law? Then Missouri is just simply not an option. So what this does is it just allows those people to consider Missouri as an option instead of taking it off the table.
Okay, is there anything in the bill that requires a person to become a Missouri resident?
Yes, and I grabbed the wrong folder that had my marked up version, so let me try to find this really quick. See, don't have the text marked on here, but it does require, I believe, within 90 days, if you have to have domicile in the state, so you have to be living in the state. And the reason we use that term instead of residency is because residency is defined in some places as living in the state for a certain period of time. I believe it's a year or more. So I didn't want to have a situation where somebody would have to be living in the state for 1 year, unable to operate in their trade before even applying for the license. And so that's why it lets you apply. If you're granted the temporary license, you know that you are good to move yourself and your family to our state, and then with 90 days they would have to provide proof of domicile showing that they're living in our state.
Okay.
This bill is similar to the military spouse licensing reciprocity bill that I passed back in 2020.
Okay.
Yeah, you had it in the House. But yeah, it's great, and it required language in that required to be a resident, and they had to have equal or greater than the requirements that whatever professional license they were going to get. Either equal to Missouri standards or higher. But they had to be a resident, and then their licensing board had to grant them a license within 30 days because that was the problem with that. And you may look into that too because we added that to that bill on the floor. Because one of the problems is they had licensing reciprocity in the past, but whatever professional licensing board it was, they messed around for a couple of years before they would actually give them a license. But so. Anyway, are there any other questions for Senator Brown? All right. Oh. Right.
So can you, I'm familiar with this bill from the other side of the building, and I think I initially didn't support it a couple years ago, but I think there's been some changes and compromises and some organizations that may have been in opposition that are no longer. Do you want to speak to some of the changes that?
If it was the version of the bill that I passed to the session before last that went over the House, I believe that should be the same version that's
Okay.
on here. I don't know if I don't recall if there might have been some changes in committee or perhaps on the House side. That was some time ago, so I don't remember exactly what, if any, changes were made once it got over to the other side. But
Okay.
as far as this bill, to my recollection, this bill should be the same as the bill that came over.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And if I'm correct, this doesn't mean that the boards have to give them a license. They can if these requirements are met, and it has to be in a timely manner.
Yeah, and it would.
So it would still be up to the boards whether or not they wanted to grant the license to that individual.
And the boards would still be able to require any standard testing for that industry as well. So, I had groups that came in the first year I followed this that originally expressed concerns, and they would talk about the extensive education and training that's involved, and the very extensive, exhausting testing that they have to go through. And I would make a point by saying, well, if someone didn't have that education, if someone didn't have these years of residency and what have you, is there any way they could pass that test? And they would look at me and say, no. And I'd say, well, if the testing's still required, then their real-world experience would have to be equivalent to that education. Otherwise, they're not going to get through that step in the first place.
Any questions for Senator Brown? All right, seeing none. Are there any witnesses testify in favor of the bill? Whenever you're ready, please come forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, James Harris representing FGA Action, testify in support of this bill. We think it's a good common sense thing. So many states have different standards on occupational licensing. The overwhelming majority of states have the same licensing in every state. But there's about 20 boards in Missouri that not every state license, and they range from acupuncturists, athletic trainers, dietitians, interior designers, interpreters, perfumists, fire investigators, tattoo, body piercing, and branding. But even with that list, the majority of these are in most states will have a license, but not in Missouri. And so this, for those that maybe come from a state, they would still take the exam. They'd still have to prove their work. They may have a test on state laws if the board thinks that's relevant for their occupation, et cetera. And we think it just helps remove some barriers to work with them having to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness? All right, seeing none, are there any other witnesses testify in favor of the bill? Any witnesses testify in opposition to? Senator, do you have any closing remarks?
I will just once again say thank you for the opportunity to present.
All right, thank you. All right, up next is my Senate Bill 190. I'm going to let Senator Berger take over here.
Senator Brown on Senate Bill 190, start whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Senator Justin Brown representing District 16. Today I'm here to present Senate Bill 190. Senate Bill 190 authorizes 3 tax credits to qualified employers and qualified workers for all tax years beginning on or after January 1st, 2026. The first tax credit allows a qualified employer to reimburse tuition to a qualified worker who receives a degree or certificate within 1 year prior to or following employment with the employer. This tax credit shall be equal to 50% the amount of tuition reimbursement and claimed for the first 4 years of employment. The second tax credit allows a qualified employer who pays compensation to a qualified employee for the first 5 years. The tax credit shall be equal to 10% of compensation paid to a qualified worker and shall not exceed $15,000 for a qualified worker in a tax year, and a total not to exceed $75,000 for any given qualified worker. The third tax credit is allowed to a taxpayer who becomes a qualified employee in an amount equal to $2,500 that may be claimed for 5 consecutive tax years within a maximum of $12,500 in tax credits. Missouri S&T's College of Engineering and Computing is in my home town, and it has roughly around 7,500 to 8,000 students. They're all engineering students, and the reason why we filed this bill, we have we're graduating some of the top engineers literally in the United States, if not the world. And what this bill does essentially, it just incentivizes some of those graduates to stay in the state, and hopefully incentivize employers to want to take on some of these students that are more outside of our urban areas, and it'll give them a tax advantage to do that. So with that, I'll try to answer any questions. This tax credit would have a sunset that would sunset on December 31st, 2031, so would be roughly a 5-year sunset. I believe I have witnesses here that will try to help me answer questions, but I'm more than happy to try to entertain that. Thank you.
Just a comment, Senator, I have a grandson that's a senior at Missouri S&T,
Well, it's good school.
and we want him to stay in Missouri,
Yep.
for sure.
That's right. It's
Thank you
it's
for
good
bringing
school.
this forward.
My opinion, it's the only engineering school there is.
Any questions of the senator from the committee? Anyone to testify in support of?
Morning, Senator. How are you, sir? Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Morgan Mundell with the American Council of Engineering Companies, representing 125 engineering companies from across the state of Missouri. We'd like to go on record in support of Senate Bill 190, as this legislation will provide engineering firms in the state of Missouri with additional tools to help recruit and train engineers and meet the demands of Missouri's economy. Just some quick statistics. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has stated that the engineering workforce is currently, as of today, at full employment, and their estimates are that engineering jobs will grow faster than the average for all occupations for the next 10 years. Approximately 188,000 engineering job openings are projected each year, yet only 142,000 engineers graduated in the U.S. last year. This is going to eventually lead to a cliff and a significant shortfall of talent, not just for Missouri, but for the entire nation. Currently, with the current workload, many of you have heard of IIJA and some of the other things that we've been doing in the state of Missouri and nationally. The ACEC Research Institute recently completed a business sentiment study which reported that 49% of all firms in the nation are now turning down work simply because they do not have enough employees to complete the work that is out there. Without the ability to hire more staff to perform the engineering services that Missouri's economy demands, Missouri-based companies simply cannot grow, projects will not be done, and our infrastructure will continue to age while the workforce tries to catch up with the demand. Senate Bill 190 presents an opportunity for Missouri to stay ahead of the rest of the nation by providing a competitive edge in hiring new graduates, keeping graduates here in Missouri, bringing new engineers in from across the country. We ask that you ask for your support for this bill. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions of this witness? Anyone else in support of Senate Bill 190?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Trent Watson, registered lobbyist here on behalf of Associated Industries of Missouri. Just want to go on record in support of Senate Bill 190. It's legislation like this that helps us attract and retain a quality workforce, and we just want to go on record in support.
Thank you for your testimony. Anybody, any questions for this witness? Anyone else to testify in support
Did
of?
it online.
Okay. Did you do a witness form, Morgan? Did you do a witness form?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Kaina Iman, and on behalf of the Boeing Company, we'd like to go on record in support of this legislation. Boeing has approximately 17,000 employees in Missouri, and we work with over 350 suppliers across the state of Missouri, and we've spent over $738 million investing with those Missouri-based suppliers. We have competitive employment at Boeing, and over half of our employees are engineers. And so this bill, we feel, is a very good retention and attraction for engineers in our industry, and we support it and hope you'll support it as well.
Any questions of this witness? Thank you.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, also, Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District has 125 full-time employees that are engineers as well that they employ, and they sent a letter.
Thank you. Anyone else to testify in support of?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Cade Tremaine. I'm here today on behalf of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry to testify in support of Senate Bill 190. This bill ultimately would create positive and lasting impacts for Missouri's engineering employers and institutions who are currently offering engineering programs. This is allowing employers to invest back into their employees, not only to offset any potential debts that they might have because of their programs, but also to garner and retain a growing workforce of talented engineers within our state. In 2022, over 26% of Missouri's engineering workforce was over the age of 55, which was putting them at risk of retiring in just a few short years. However, also in 2022, the turnover rate for engineers in Missouri was also 26%, which was the second lowest in our economy. So we know that engineers in our state are staying in the field, but we just simply need to get them there. So overall, the Missouri Chamber strongly supports this bill because it helps retain that strong workforce in Missouri, and it supports our existing engineering employers. So with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions of this witness? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to testify in support of? Anyone in opposition to? Anyone for informational purposes only? Seeing none, Senator, do you recognize to close?
I just want to say thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for allowing me the opportunity to present this bill.
That concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 190 with no further business coming before the committee. I now make a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned.